maybe I don't understand it. You're changing, I can't stand it. My heart can't take this damage.
The last video that I put up was talking about how to interact with arrays and objects that are inside of arrays and nested objects, and we also talked about how to destructure the arrays that are inside, or the objects that are inside of the array, and even how to destructure the nested objects that are deeply nested inside of these arrays. So it was pretty fun. Now we're going to learn some dynamic programming and really get down to the heart of what the fun stuff is and start building from there. So in this one, I want to do something like for one, on that first video, I was getting really bored being able to just grab one item at a time and mutate it, and well, not even mutated. We didn't do any actual mutating. All we did was just grab some data from there, which is all fun and all, but I like to be able to go into data and really interact with it. So we're going to learn a few ways that we can do that. The first way that we're going to learn is using a for each loop. So for each is a method of an array, and what it does is it goes through an array one time and does something that you want it to do. So basically it'll look like this. So we'll say users, so we're calling in our array, and then we're going to say for each, and then it takes a callback. So if you look over here, it says for each, and then it says callback function, and then the value. So whatever the value that we pass in there is going to be representative of what is the array that we're passing in. So in this case, I'm passing in users. So you see that it's going to represent ID, job, age, so all of that fun stuff. And somewhere in there's name, I missed it, so name. So we're going to do ES6, and we're just going to say user. For the most part, you're going to see the naming conventions that I use, and I think that they're very important. I don't necessarily like to use like R or A or B or 1. Well, you can't even use 1, but I try to be as descriptive with the names of my variables as possible, because you could come back like 2 weeks later and look at your code and not know what it was doing. And same thing could be said about other developers who might be looking at your code or trying to fix something. So naming your stuff is very important. I think that that would be one of the first things that I would want people to learn, is just how to properly name their stuff. So in this case, we're doing a for each, and I'm going into users, which is plural for multiple users, and I'm passing in user because it's only going to be 1. And you can see over here it's just 1. So now we're going to say user dot ID plus equal 1. So I don't care with this. I don't have to care whether there's 1,000 users or just 2 or 1 or whatever. As long as this thing has users and there's a field called ID, then this is going to work. So at this point, we can console log it, and we're going to console log users. So we don't have to console log anything different. We're just going to say console log and then say users. So we're going to look down over here and see that our IDs changed. So with that, if we go up here, our IDs over here are 1, 2, 3, but if we go down here, they're 2, 3, 4. So this is both good and bad at the same time. And now why it's good is because we get quick action on something that we wanted. This moment we wanted to be able to do that to the IDs, but we don't always want to do that. It's actually an anti-pattern in a lot of programming. And so reason being is because you lose access to that old data that was there. It's completely wiped out. So I can't like compare any values to the old values or anything like that. I've completely lost it and I can't get it back. So I mean, one way that you could do that is by creating another variable that holds a reference to this and all that, but then that's just extra work that you have to do. So what we could do is another fun thing. We could say users and then just go users.map, and then we can save that. You see a little bit different, and put these little parentheses in there because now it's returning something. If I were to go back to my for each and do that, it's not returning anything. for each does not return anything. So what for each does is it grabs the original, changes a bunch of things, and that's it. It just changes a bunch of things. So it's the equivalence of me just saying users 0 dot ID equals user 0 dot ID plus 1. So it's like the equivalent of me saying that. And at no point does that statement that I just wrote, at no point is that returning anything. So, but map, however, actually returns something. So what it's trying to return is a new array. Now, if I do this, like right now, you can't really see what it's really doing unless I put it into a variable. So for me, when I first learned for each, I thought I was the man, but then I moved on to map and I was completely lost. And I was like, you know what? I'm taking a break for JavaScript, taking a break from it. And 3 weeks later, like I was like, yeah, I'm not coming back to JavaScript. So if you're anything like me or how I was back then, hopefully this will help you out. But map returns a new array. So what I can do is say const new, let's say new array. I normally don't like these names, and I just like talked about it earlier, but I don't care. Leave me alone. So we're gonna say new array, and then now we're seeing what this is returning. So this is returning a new array with these new values over here. So it's returning an array with these numbers because that's basically what we're returning. We're just saying users.id plus equal 1. So how do we get that into the ID though? So if we want to do that, we would have to say something like put this into curly brackets, which now it's like, what the heck is this? So it's freaking out, giving me a syntax error because now it's an object. And so I can say ID and then do that. So I'm putting my array, I'm putting my objects into an array and returning that. And the prettier way of doing this, I guess, is actually to be able to do one of these, and then we can get rid of these parentheses because they kind of don't really follow the way that people normally write it. That's just part of the fat arrow, whatever ES6 syntax. But essentially we could say return and then put our little curly brackets here and then say ID. So now we're returning IDs. So what happened to the rest of the data in here? Like I also want the rest of the data. So how do I bring that in along with it? Because there's still the name, the job, the age, that's not coming in. All I wanted to do was originally just change the ID. So with map, you get to do these cool little things here, such as I want to reference the old data. So the old data is actually user. So what I just did there is some more ES6 syntax. So the ES6 syntax is basically spread operator. That's what this is called. This is a spread operator. So it's basically, and it's a little bit difficult to explain, but basically it's saying, hey, I have this object and I have these properties in here. I have these other properties or this other object, and I want you to spread it into this this object. And if you happen to find this in there, then I want to replace it with this. I want to kind of mutate the one that's in there and replace it with this field. So that's the difference with map. It's a little bit more complex, but map lets you build out new arrays or new objects and put them into an array. So it returns an array, and this gives you an opportunity to do whatever you want with that array. So let's say that I didn't want to just spread a bunch of stuff in there. Instead, what I want to do is actually move some data around. So I want to really have fun with this and replace the name with user.job. So you're already seeing my stuff change. And then I could say, let's replace ID actually. Let's replace ID with user.age. and then replace age with user.id, and then job, kjob, with user.name. So you're seeing over here that because of the way map works, I was able to just completely change everything else out. Now, I wonder what happened to my original array though. I can't spell console right now. There we go. Console.log and then users. So let's say users. So I wonder what happened to my original array. All right, so now we have our new array right here, and our new array has all of the changes that we made saved into it. But if you look at the old one, it still has the new values that were in there. And if you look in here, 2, 3, 4, that's still changed from the last time that we used the for each. I don't even know. I think that's a Quokka thing. I think it saved it into memory. That should actually still be 1, 2, 3, but whatever. Either way, it saved all of that. And so now we have this new object, so this new array, and that's being saved right there, which is pretty cool because that means that we still have access to this old one, which means that we can compare state. So if this is my new state and that's my old state, I can do a whole bunch of stuff that really just depends on if there was a change made over here. Like if this ID is no longer the same as that ID, then I can do something cool. So hey, thanks for watching this series. If it helped you out in any way, do me a favor and just like the video, subscribe, maybe even share it either on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. It'll help the channel out, and I'm going to be putting out some more videos in this series. So see you next time.